We're gonna start in about 1 or 2 minutes. All right, please be seated. We're gonna start. Even if we are still waiting for one speaker to come, but time is up, so let me just start our event on jurisdictional approaches under the Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. My name is Soo-young Chung, professor of Korea University, at the same time the president of Seoul International Law Academy, which is one of the which is the host organization of this event. This event is also sponsored by Korea Forestry Service, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, and then UNOSD. For the first, Mr. Jong So-yoon, who was supposed to give opening remarks, could not attend this meeting for his personal reasons. So I just would like to deliver his message to all of you. He just wanted to say that thank you very much for your coming to this event. This is our ongoing efforts to address the issues of climate change by utilizing the Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement, even in the Korean context, because we have a very ambitious target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by using the Article 6, and then there is a strong need for Korea to be engaged in implementation of Article 6 at a large scale. So that's where jurisdictional approach idea comes in. There are different areas of the cooperation, including the forestry, ocean, and energy. All these three sectors may have different characteristics, but at the same time, same potential of developing large scale of the cooperation to implement NDC, not only of the Korea, but also host governments. And then, having said that, I would like to invite Sung Bum Kim, His Excellency Sung Bum Kim, Deputy Minister of Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and colleagues. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to join you today at this meaningful event on jurisdictional approaches under the Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. I extend my sincere congratulations to the organizer of this event, Center for Climate and Sustainable Development Law and Policy, on the convening of this event at COP29, where countries around the world unite to address the pressing challenges posed by climate change. Today's event provides an opportunity to share insights on global cooperation and discuss strategies for advancing international mitigation projects under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. Around the world, many countries are setting ambitious NDCs to turn back the clock on climate change, a challenge shared by all of humanity. In line with these global endeavors, the Republic of Korea has committed to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. As part of this commitment, we aim to reduce 37.5 million tons of carbon dioxide, representing 13% of our target, through international mitigation efforts. as the ocean can absorb approximately 30% of global CO2 emissions. It holds great promise for reaching these ambitious targets. While international mitigation efforts in the marine sector are still in their early stages, blue carbon, marine energy, shipping, and fisheries all presenting promising opportunities. Among these, blue carbon has drawn global attention for its potential. Last year, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea established a blue carbon strategy, reflecting our commitment to addressing the climate crisis. Distinguished delegates, the importance of the international cooperation in responding to climate change grows ever more critical. Developed countries are stepping up their efforts to collaborate with developing countries and international organizations to enhance greenhouse gas reductions on a global scale. In 2022, during COP27, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries signed an MOU with GGGI, Global Green Growth Institute, to advance Korea's NDC implementation. This August, we built on this momentum by reaching an agreement to implement marine-based mitigation activities. In addition, we have broadened our collaboration with global organizations such as the World Bank, initiating emission reduction projects utilizing fishing ports. This year, we have also begun feasibility studies for international mitigation projects in countries such as Vietnam, Egypt, and Indonesia. With this endeavor, we are aiming to strengthen intergovernmental cooperation in the marine, fisheries, ports, and shipping sectors under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Building on these partnerships, we are planning to identify additional countries for blue carbon project and promote capacity building programs for developing countries to achieve tangible outcomes in greenhouse gas mitigation. Amid these national and global developments, today's event offers a valuable platform to share international mitigation activities across the fisheries, energy, and marine sector. I hope that today's discussions will inspire actionable strategies for Korea's expanded global mitigation efforts. In closing, I'd like to extend my deepest gratitude to each of you to present here today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Song In-nam, Director General of International Forest Affairs Bureau of the Korea Forest Service. The floor is yours.
Good day, everyone. First, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Jung Se-yong, Director of the CSDLFP. And it is a great honor and a pleasure to be here with so many distinguished opinion leaders and guests from around the world. The Korea Forest Service is committed to achieving a reduction of 5 million tons of greenhouse gases. To this end, we are advancing RED Plus initiative as outlined in Article 5 of the Paris Agreement and promoting them as a part of Article 6 project. In particular, RED Plus project not only maximize carbon benefit, but also deliver substantial non-carbon benefit, fostering sustainable development for both Korea and partner countries while contributing to both countries' NDC goals and creating positive cycle of sustainability. The Varsha framework for RED Plus, established at COP29 in 2013, requires RED Plus implementation at the national level and recommends the intermediate subnational level. This approach is ideal for mitigating the risk of forest non-permanence and minimizing reversion or emission leakage. Based on our experience conducting individual project, LED Plus project in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos within the Mekong region, the Korea Forest Service is now working to expand jurisdictional initiatives. We are implementing the subnational LED Plus project in Laos by opening the Cooperation Center in this October to officially launch the project. Additionally, we are currently assessing subnational and national LED Plus project with Timor-Leste, the Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. If negotiations proceed as expected, we anticipate signing LOAs by December this year. We believe that this effort of forest-based international mitigation will enable us to achieve the Korea Forest Service's target of reducing 5 million tons of greenhouse gases. Embarking on this Article 6 project is a new journey for us, particularly as we advance LED Plus initiative at the subnational level, which present considerable challenges. However, we hope that this journey will lead to meaningful international cooperation to enable people worldwide to benefit from valuable and healthy forests. The Korea Forest Service is committed to joining you on this journey, and I trust that today's gathering will serve as a platform for us all to share and gain positive influence. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite His Excellency Howard Bemsey to this podium. Before doing so, initially, His Excellency Robert Bose, who is the Vice Chairperson and Executive Director of the Climate Change Commission of the Government of Philippines, was scheduled to come, but due to his government duties in Philippines, and then he sent us his regrets not being able to join our meeting today. For your information, one of the important efforts has been discussed between Korea and the Philippines regarding the developing jurisdictional project in the forest sector, utilizing some ODA initiatives of the Republic of Korea. And recently, President of the Republic of Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, made a state visit to Philippines, and we recognize that there is an important agreement between two governments about continuous collaboration and cooperation in climate change issues in the broader context of tackling climate and then utilizing Article 6.2. And then now, Howard, I'd like to invite you to this podium.
Thanks very much, Soo-young, and thank you for the invitation to be here for this very interesting and far-reaching discussion this afternoon. I will just make a few comments that will, I hope, set the scene in a broad context so that we can think about Article 6.2 and its potential as a part of the whole effort within the convention, the Climate Convention, to establish a firm basis for international collaboration. And in doing that, I think the first place to start is to think about the objective of Article 6 as a whole. We need to think about 6.2 in the context of 6.4 and indeed the whole article. And that article is there for one reason. It's very explicit, and that is to increase ambition. And the impact has to be, everything we do under Article 6 has to be seen in that context, in that particular context. It should be increasing ambition, and it will do that by reducing costs, by finding the least costly means of reaching the targets we set, and thus enabling us to set harder targets than we would otherwise. So if what we do is not meeting that objective, then it's not really part of Article 6. I think another issue we should consider in the context of Article 6 is its negotiating history. Practicing lawyers used to do this a lot when I was a bit younger, but these days it seems to be left mainly to academics to think about the negotiating history when we're looking at how to implement an international agreement. But really it's crucial, and particularly with Article 6, because the negotiating history reveals so much about the dynamics that will be necessary for successful implementation. So let's move to that and consider the fundamental issue in the negotiating history of Article 6, which has been how to ensure integrity. I think that's been the beginning and the end. And in the land sector, which is where most of my experience lies, there've been real concerns that I think have been amounted to a fear that the use of emissions reductions in the land sector, and the same applies in oceans, would be a means of excusing those countries which have accepted obligations from implementing those obligations, from reaching them. There have been some reasons for that. The most important one, I think, is that it is difficult to measure the change in emissions in the landscape and in the ocean. That's something that we have to accept as a reality. But it's not impossible to get close. And for a long time we thought that we had a very exact understanding of emissions from mining. And then a couple of years ago we found that we'd underestimated fugitive emissions by an order of magnitude. So, a broad context again, we can never be absolutely sure that we've got an exact assessment as we work together to find an answer to climate change. And we have to do our best, but not let the lack of the perfect prevent us from doing something useful and worthwhile. So I think we have to deal with the risks as we understand them, the difficulty of measurement, the risk of double counting, and that other key factor, particularly in the land, but also I think in all of the Article 6 provisions, the need for additionality to be demonstrated. This is one of the issues that baffles people when they come to look at Article 6, I think very commonly. It baffled me for many years. What does this notion of additionality really mean? And fundamentally it means that because climate change is caused by human activity, then in responding to climate change, we have to demonstrate that human activity is deliberately seeking to solve the problem, and we're not just coasting along using natural events as an excuse for what we should be doing. So I won't deal any further with additionality, no doubt others will, but it is a really key issue in the whole of Article 6, I think. So it's no surprise then, it's perhaps a disappointment, but it's no surprise that the negotiation of how to implement Article 6 has taken so long. It's taken far too long. I think very few people would disagree with that notion, and I personally am very glad to see that on Monday we did have consensus in the room on taking further steps to implement Article 6.4. That's progress, but it hasn't got us to where we need to be. just partly reflecting, I guess, my own experience, I think about all of this as analogous to nuclear safeguards, the implementation, because nuclear safeguards are all about providing assurance that the use of nuclear material will be as we expect it to be, and it won't be diverted for nefarious purposes. And that's about integrity. So under Article 6, we have, to me, a similar dynamic. So it's very good, and it's really essential that we have a multilateral and international system that's well established, that gives us, that we have confidence in, that gives us assurance that integrity will be maintained in all of the actions taken under Article 6. That's really critical. But, just as with nuclear safeguards, we may want more than that. Individual countries will probably want bilateral arrangements to underpin, as with the Philippines, to underpin the arrangements which will be accredited multilaterally. That's what happens with nuclear safeguards. So what that comes to, I think, is when you're implementing Article 6.2 or any of the other parts of Article 6, choose your partners very carefully. Many of my friends in the business of emissions reduction in the landscape would like to think that they can be trusted just to get on with it as business in a normal sense. But it's very clear to me, and to many of those friends as well, really, when they think it through, that this article requires very close regulation by governments. And without that, the integrity will always be in question. So for Korea, looking at collaboration with other countries under Article 6, I would say think carefully about your partners. And I hope I'll be forgiven for suggesting that one of the partners you might think about is Australia, because it does meet the criteria that I think are required. It has, basically Australia was one of the 2 or 3 founders of the landscape as part of the climate response within the Climate Convention, and has worked on that issue ever since. So it has established regulatory systems for governing the use of the landscape as part of the response to climate change, has a very well-established regulator, it has robust methodologies. There have been several independent inquiries recently to look at the Australian system, and it has been given a strong pass mark, if I can put it that way, from those. So I think I mention Australia as a particular country, but I think for Korea and for any other country looking for partners, you need a country, you need to work with a country that has a very well-established regulatory system for the area that you're examining as a potential Article 6 activity. Whether it's in the land, whether it's in energy, whether it's in the oceans, you need very good regulation. With that good regulation, I think we can see a very promising future for implementation of Article 6. It won't be anything like enough to help us turn the corner in dealing with climate change, but we're in the situation now where we need to do everything we can in every way we can, and Article 6 implementation can really assist. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see his credential from the poster, Howard Bamsey was the Director General of the Global Green Growth Institute. Also, he was the executive director of the Green Climate Fund. Both organizations are based in Republic of Korea, and then that means that he can not only leader of the climate change in the world, he has remained as a close friend and partner for Republic of Korea. And then, quoting what he said, Article 6.2 doesn't necessarily require participation of the two countries. We can form the small number of the country club through which we can have a more efficiency and a better performance, developing and sharing the same mechanism. And then because the Republic of Korea now pose a lot of emphasis on Indo-Pacific region as a primary, area of its own diplomacy, I've seen a lot of potential and possible opportunities immediately available between Republic of Korea and Australia to develop and share the similar and the same mechanism under Article 6.2. So having said that, because we lost one speaker, we may have some time to enjoy. So I would like to have a quick photo session with the speakers. So would you want to come to forward so that we can have a quick photo session? Thank you. Now preparing for the three presentations, let me just explain about the general context, how we actually invited different speakers to this event. In the presentation session, as you may recognize, we invited three speakers from three different international organizations. There are good reasons why. Because these three organizations are partner organizations for each Ministry of Republic of Korea. We have some representatives from those ministries. So for instance, the first presentation will be done by AFOCO. That's Asia Forest Cooperation Organization. It's a small intergovernmental organization based in Republic of Korea, focusing on the forest cooperation ASEAN region. So AFOCO has teamed up with the Korea Forest Service to develop the various forest sector related activities to address the climate change. And then second presenter comes from the Global Green Growth Institute because as introduced by the Deputy Minister Kim, recently Minister of Oceans and Fisheries of Republic of Korea made an MOU with the Global Green Growth Institute to develop the blue carbon cooperation in the context of implementation of the Article 6.2. And also, lastly, there is a representative from the UNDP because UNDP has been discussing about a possibility of the cooperation to develop the jurisdictional approach in energy sector with the Republic of Korea. And we have Mr. Kim from the Ministry of the Trade, Industry, and Energy today. So there are good reasons. This is not just a matter of inviting the presenters here and there. There are some targeted focuses that we can share. All these three presentations are talking about how and why jurisdictional approach may be important, how it will be possible. So having said that, let us invite the first speaker from the APOCO, Mr. Pavilion, Vice Executive Director of APOCO. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, distinguished delegate and esteemed colleagues. My name is Pavilion. I served as the Vice Executive Director of the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization, APOCO. It is an honor to present today on the topic Forest-Based Climate Action for Achieving NDCs through Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. Thank you for the opportunity to share insight into our forest-focused climate cooperation effort and APOCO's contribution to the region. Allow me to briefly introduce the organization I represent. APOCO is a treaty-based intergovernmental organization. We have 17 member countries, 15 parties, and 2 observers. APOCO has implemented 43 projects, including 32 ongoing and 11 completed, which focus on restoration, climate adaptation, enhancing resilience to forest disasters, improving livelihood, and strengthening institutional capacity. The total project value is $88.6 million from 2013 to 2024. APOCO was established as an international organization in 2018 officially. It received permanent observer status from the UN General Assembly and became an observer organization to the UNCCD in 2020. In 2022, APOCO was admitted as an observer organization to the UNFCCC. Thus, APOCO contributes to global goals, including SDGs and climate change targets through forest cooperation in Asia. This map, provided by Global Forest Watch, illustrates the ongoing loss of tree covers globally from 2001 to 2023. The continued loss of forests and the degradation of vital ecosystem service has significant implications for sustainable development. Recognizing this impact, world leaders, government, and the private sector has increasingly reached the consensus on the urgent need for international effort in forest conservation. Various international initiatives have been launched to conserve and expand forests from the perspectives of climate change and biodiversity. Notable initiatives include the Bond Challenge, the New York Declaration on Forests, the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forests, and the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership. Despite various global initiatives aimed at forest conservation, the latest report from the Forest Declaration on Forests reveals that global deforestation rates continue to exceed the baseline, with a substantial gap between current rates and the set target for deforestation reduction. The baseline for deforestation was established at 6.26 million hectares, with a 2023 target of reducing sorry. This to 4.38 million hectares. However, actual deforestation in 2023 reached 6.37 million hectares, 2 points above the baseline and 45% higher than the target, underscoring the urgent need for strengthen the conservation effort. In addition to avoiding emission from deforestation, forests play a crucial role as a conventional means of carbon dioxide removal in climate change mitigation. The UNFCCC's 2023 synthesis report on NDCs indicates that forests are essential for forest cost-effective emission reduction of the 168 NDCs submitted by 195 parties, 69 countries, including afforestation, reforestation, revegetation, and sustainable forest management. 34% of parties emphasized reducing deforestation and forest degradation, including REDD+ activities. Additionally, countries have identified greenhouse gas reduction measures that cost less than $20 per ton of carbon dioxide. Among these, forests and other ecosystem-based solutions are highlighted as having the cost-effective reduction potential with an estimated annual mitigation potential of 2.28 gigaton. The 2024 UNEP emission gap report similarly highlighted the forest sector cost-effective and large-scale emission reduction potential. Forestry-related actions such as reduced deforestation, increased reforestation, and improved forest management represent around 90% and 20% of the total reduction potential for 2030 and 2035, respectively. Forest-based climate cooperation offers a cost-effective way to close the emission gap and achieve conditional NDCs with international support. Many countries include cost-effective forest-based target in their conditional NDCs. For example, Vietnam's 2024 NDC update increased the conditional target from 27% to 43.5%, include 14.1 million ton reduction for LULUCF, contingency of USDB 1.6 billion in support. Forest-based climate action under the Paris Agreement should primarily focus on two key elements. Article 5, which emphasizes the role of REDD+ in reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, and Article 6, which enables voluntary cooperation between parties. These articles provide critical framework for countries to enhance their collective effort in addressing climate change through forest conservation and sustainable land use practice. To reiterate, REDD+ cooperation based on the cooperative approach under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement can be considered. REDD+ is an incentive mechanism developed under the Kyoto Protocol for result-based payment to support forest conservation as part of the four elements of the UNFCCC Varshava framework. Under the Paris Agreement, many countries consider REDD Plus as a means for preparing and implementing reduction in the LULUCF sector. Through REDD Plus and voluntary cooperation, Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement facilitate both the achievement of the host country NDC and the generation of ITMOs. As an example, Suriname is making significant strides in preparing to be the first countries to implement a RED plus ITMO case under Article 6.2 the Paris Agreement. The country is focusing on conserving 50 million hectares of pristine forest with the goal of reducing emissions by 20 million tons annually. These efforts are part of a broad strategy that align with the preparation of ITMOs, ensuring that Suriname's RED Plus initiative contribute to both national and global climate goals. Another example comes from the Republic of Korea, which has made a notable commitment is its updated NDC for 2023 to reduce 37.5 million tons of emission abroad. Since 2012, Korea has been actively engaged in implementing RED Plus pilot project contributing to global forest conservation effort. Looking ahead, new legislation set to take effect in 2024 will further strengthen Korean international effort to reduce emission from the forest sector while also enhancing cooperation under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. This will play a key role in advancing Korea's contribution to forest-based climate action. As a prominent example, Korea has formalized its RED Plus cooperation with Laos under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement in the last October. This collaboration encompasses key initiatives, including the establishment of the REDD Plus Cooperation Center and the implementation of the subnational REDD Plus project in Pongsari province. These efforts are crucial steps in advancing joint forest conservation and emission reduction goals between the two countries. In line with this direction and effort, APOCO aims to support measurable, reportable, and scalable forest cooperation that can contribute to the UNFCCC global stake. Our approach emphasizes alignment with the SDGs, scaling up cooperation, and enhancing the valuation and marketability of forest outcomes. Through this, APOCO seeks to provide sustainable and impactful solutions for the forest-based climate action. APOCO's recent REDD Plus readiness initiative adopted at the 11th APOCO Assembly 2 weeks ago will support expanded effort in this area. 11 APOCO member countries have included LULUCF targets in their NDCs with active participation in the UNFCCC RED Plus mechanism. This initiative will strengthen their capacity for forest-based climate action and contribute to the global climate goal. Through the Red Plus Readiness Initiative, APOCO aims to assist member countries in developing and implementing robust national Red Plus framework. Additionally, we are committed to enhancing to institutional and technical capacity of stakeholders engaged in Article 6.2 cooperation. In June, representatives from APOCO and CSD Lab held a discussion with key stakeholders in the Philippines to explore capacity building opportunities for forest cooperation under Article 6. As part of this, key elements of the UNFCCC Warsaw framework for Red Plus, including legal and institutional capacity building for Red Plus and Article 6.2, as well as the alignment of national and provisional Red Plus strategy are being integrated to ensure effective and scalable implementation. Positive developments are already underway, indicating strong progress in strengthening collaboration and enhancing the country's ability to engage in international climate action. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the thorough presentations on what is the situation in the forest sector in general, and then how APOCO has been developing its activities to team up with developing countries in the forest sector. Especially last slide shows us current efforts made by the APOCO together with the government of Philippines to develop the jurisdictional activities in Philippines in order to actually bring the not only climate finance resources, but also bring the other opportunities for both the Philippines and possibly Republic of Korea. So in the sense that I feel really sorry that we lost a chance to hear about this story from Philippine government's point of view, but I'm sure that we'll have another chance to hear that story later on. Now, I'd like to go to GGGI, which is also a Seoul-based intergovernmental organization. As I introduced that the GGGI recently made a MOU with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries to develop the blue carbon project in developing countries. And then Fenella will share the story. And I also would like to know how GGI can team up with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries to specifically develop the project sites and then using Article 6 mechanisms through the GGGI. So Fenella, floor is yours.
Great. Does this one work? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, it's actually a bit easier without those headsets, isn't it? My name's Fenella Awan, and I head carbon pricing at GGGI. And as Professor Chung has kindly introduced, I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about what our business does, what our business is, and the MOU that we have signed and funding we have from the Ministry of Fisheries, and a few of the challenges around blue carbon. So just to give a few of you, there we go, an idea of who the Global Green Growth Institute is. We're a treaty-based international organization. We have about 49 member countries now. I think it will be 50 in a couple of weeks. We are there and we exist to help our members with a vision of green growth. And that was helped enormously by the Paris Agreement and NDCs. So we work on anything from policy to reporting, looking at sectoral level work, and helping with identifying finance. That those levels of finance can be climate finance. So we work very closely with the GCF, looking at readiness and full proposals, and helping to get national entities accredited. And also we work on carbon finance. So that's the area that I look at as a further way of enabling countries to follow that pathway of green growth by getting international finance into the country. So we've leveraged about 10 billion since 2017. We currently have activities, I think we're at project count about 258 projects across our countries. And we generally have a leverage ratio of $1 that comes into GGGI for technical assistance, leverages about $25 of impact in the country. So blue carbon, and I have to say I had quite a battle about this because there was quite a debate internally, because there's a bit of a difference between different markets as to what the full definition of blue carbon is. So we've gone the conservative route, and blue carbon is defined actually as just the carbon that is sequestrated into the soil where rooted vegetation exists. However, we do understand that there are many looking and thinking about the sequestration that happens within the oceans and also in the vegetation itself. But removals here is looking at what are you doing, and I note Howard's earlier comment about additionality. You're going to be doing something that wasn't being done before. So it's not an idea of just where mangroves happen to be growing already. It's where are you planting, where are you protecting, where are you extending mangroves. So these were included by the IPCC as part of the coastal wetland work. But I would say the important thing to note on this side is it's a moving feast. So this definition may change, or the understanding of it may change, as there have been special reports as well that talk about whole ecosystems from the IPCC. But at the moment, this is the conservative definition. So if I look at challenges around doing a blue carbon Article 6 project and doing a transaction. So first of all, you have to get the government ready in the host country to be able to trade. So they need a law or decree that says who is in charge of all carbon trading, who is responsible and has the authority of that host country government to actually sign a sale or sign an agreement to say, yes, this activity will be authorized under Article 6. You need to work out what your authorization criteria are in your host country. And that, for example, will include, are you going to decide that you will be above the unconditional NDC, above the unconditional and conditional NDC? Are you going to have a negative list of, we will not trade out of the following sectors, we won't authorize those? Or a positive list, we actively encourage the following sectors? Which is it, or will you assess each project on a case-by-case basis, which you obviously can do? You need multiple ministries involved, so you can't just have one ministry signing things off. So you need to ensure that stakeholders that wouldn't normally be at a COP or be involved in carbon or need to be involved in this space now need to get involved, because the Ministry of Transport may have an obligation under the NDC, or the Ministry of Energy, or the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Justice, because of the bilateral agreements that are signed. So we need capacity building, and capacity building for the private sector who are developing these programs, capacity building beyond even going to designated operational entities on a national basis. And then importantly, and often most nervously for new seller countries coming in, we need to manage the risk of overselling, making sure that what they're selling, they're still able to meet their own NDC obligations. Then looking at the accounting for blue carbon, and I'll come on to some work that GGGI is undertaking in Indonesia to give you a bit of a deeper understanding of that. But the MRV structure on a national level and on the project level is quite challenging, especially, and I think it's already been mentioned in the speeches so far, it is challenging to measure emission reductions in land-based activities, but it is being looked at, and we are looking at it under another program. And then you need a robust carbon database with blue carbon ecosystem, around the blue carbon ecosystem. And then lastly, what we need is the rules and the understanding of blue carbon. And here I talk about, okay, so at the moment, blue carbon standards are generally deemed to be in the voluntary market, as was referred to. So now we need to make sure that the methodologies are robust enough and cover all of the aspects of Article 6, so real, additional, and permanent. And those methodologies are being developed by a number of organizations. So work is ongoing in all of these areas, but it's how we bring the different areas together and how quickly can we do that. So if I look at blue carbon methodology and what's happening, so the great news is, as we heard earlier this week, 6.4, fantastic. And I think very, I will say on a personal note, probably clever, get it out the way on the first day, and then it stops it getting tied up with anything else. But we need to now look at removal standards and rules. And I was talking to one of the party negotiators this morning, actually, and he was saying, look, you know, at the moment we have one removals methodology and sets of rules, but really, can you have direct air capture and blue carbon removals methodology under the same set of rules? Maybe you actually need to divide it up because the circumstances are so very different for them, but they are both removals. Then we have the reports around how methodologies and how the challenges of blue carbon can be addressed. And I would say where it says unique challenges in property rights, I must admit, I would say that's not unique at all. That's actually not unique to blue carbon. It's the same across all many land-based programs, and even if they're not land-based, if they're on land. And then we have methodologies that are being considered and developed, and having risk management in place for non-permanent. So there's in 6.4 the idea of a buffer zone, and then we have a buffer, and then we have other aspects being taken up by other standards like VERA. So if we look what is GGGI doing in these initial points. So we have a program working in Indonesia, which is like what I would call the pre-step to doing carbon trading in blue carbon. So this is actually how to help a country include blue carbon as a sector in their NDC. So if you think about it, if you don't have it in your NDC, so you are not measuring it, how can you apply a corresponding adjustment to it? Because you would then need to add back into an inventory for the energy sector or something. So it's really, the first step is making sure it's actually in the NDC. So here we've been working with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, as it was until last week. So it's now the Ministry of Forestry. on their national blue carbon policy framework and also enhancing MRV systems. And if we get the MRV systems right, then we can lay the groundwork for, if you can, I think this sort of old trading phrase is, if you can measure it, you can trade it. But you've got to be able to measure it first, and then using that to unlock financing. And importantly for a country like Indonesia, and I think Philippines would be the same, it's boosting the diversity and looking at sustainable finance. It's really, it kind of, admittedly, mangroves is so magical because it hits so many buttons. It's adaptation, it's climate resilience, it's biodiversity, and it's emission reduction. So on that point, it makes it even more important why we need to raise and keep environmental integrity at the forefront, because obviously it's very appealing for some to maybe diminish that in order to try and rapidly do a transaction. So we want to make sure that for the Ministry of Fisheries and all participants in blue carbon, that we uphold the highest standards. I think some of the challenges, the misinterpretation that mangrove and blue carbon projects are emission reducing projects. They're not, they're removal projects. And then there's still a differing perception over baseline definition. So what is the baseline that you are then getting a removal from? And then the data limitations, that's been a super challenge to look at the data and inventory limitations. And then you have, as I've mentioned before, the governance and institutional roles and methodology. So here is a little pathway of what we've been doing with the Ministry of Fisheries. So we had an MOU signed and agreement earlier this year, and it's a multi-year program that will look at identifying interest of countries in blue carbon. And then we will look at the readiness assessment. How ready is the government to trade? What is in the NDC? Is blue carbon included? And the finalisation of the approach that Korea is planning on 6.2 and exactly how the joint committees or trading will work. And then support of host country readiness. We're looking at the capacity building and technical assistance, and then origination and preparation of support for and supporting the country for requirements of Article 6 and developing the mitigation activities. Oh, there we go, sorry. I put the wrong one, changing it on one and not the other. So there you go. So the country scoping and understanding, support the host country readiness, and origination and preparation. And then we have, where is GDGI working at the moment? So we're probably working in carbon, some places blue carbon, some places not, in about 25 countries at the moment, and so about half of our membership. Some of those, the dark red ones, are the funders rather than the potential sellers. So you can happily, there's a QR code at the end, so you can get this picture again. Everyone loves a map. And then here, this is the new facility that we have started, the Carbon Transaction Facility. So this contains, sorry, there you go. This was launched by His Excellency Ban Ki-moon on October the 16th as part of GDGI's Global Green Growth Week. And it is a collection of trust funds. So it holds a multi-donor readiness facility that will help countries to prepare and put in those regulations and the processes and procedures and start to identify those mitigation activities in a multi-donor trust fund. And then on the other side, we have a number of single donor trust funds that will purchase ITMOs. And there we have countries such as Sweden, Norway, and more, and New Zealand is contributing to readiness. And I'm sure you will hear more about that over the following week. But this is one way that we feel that we will be able to scale activities in Article 6 for the benefit of all of our participating countries and funders. The aim is that we will have readiness to the amount of $50 million, and we expect to have that by Q1 next year. And carbon trust fund amounts up to about $500 million by 2027. And we expect to be signing and making some significant announcements about that whilst at COP. So we think this will complement well with the work that we are doing with the Korean government, and obviously hope that the Korean government will come in and join the CTF as well. And there I have a QR code if you want to see the website or the brochure. No? And I say thank you very much.
Thank you once again for the thorough presentation on the Article 6 related programs of the Global Green Growth Institute. Fenella, actually, as a friend of the GGGI, that you know well, I have some suggestions and recommendations for your team. Because GGGI is not necessarily a Korean organization, so GGGI provides global public goods services to all the developing countries. However, as a donor country, specifically Republic of Korea, may have specific situations that it has to deal with. Korea is very unique in a sense of having its unique NDC to using the Article 6.2 to achieve the NDC target, almost legally binding domestically. That's very unique. And then that brings us to the very technical issue of what is the use of the ITMOs that we can generate under the Article 6. Korea needs to have ITMOs for the NDC use. And as I understand, the GGGI's Article 6 activity has tend to be aligned, not only the NDC, also OIMP to a large extent, by promoting voluntary carbon market. So if not, then number two, what about the methodology? So under the UNFCCC process, we need to develop the methodology which may need to be legitimized by the UNFCCC process. So in that sense that, for instance, the 6.2 news is great in the sense that we made ensure the legitimacy of some of the possible good methodologies. They may not have been recognized by the UN process. So GGGI might be in a very good position actually to work together with partner countries like Republic of Korea to address this methodological issues and in the blue carbon area. So there are some technical issues that the GGI raises as great programs, and then if the GGI can deploy more customized services for the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, as you indicated that your fund will be only growing in the future. So I'm looking forward to hearing that great news from the GGI and the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries later on by addressing some of the technical issues between two government and the GGGI. Having said that, I'd like to invite Letitia from the UNDP. Letitia has been working on the jurisdictional approach in the energy sector, and then I want to hear about that story in more detail.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Chung, and thank you for the invitation to be here. My name is Letícia Guimarães. I am the head of carbon markets for the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. So start a little bit with the advantages of a jurisdictional approach for the energy sector. As we know, the energy sector is the major contributor in terms of greenhouse gas emissions globally, so it's definitely a sector that needs scaled up solutions and immediate solutions. In order to achieve integrity and impact at this higher level, the project level interventions are also often not sufficient to address many of the issues that the sector itself faces. There are high transaction costs when it comes to the development of projects. So whenever we go about and UNDP implements some of these projects in many partner countries, we do a financial feasibility assessment. And in many cases, for many developing countries, the size of the energy plants is not sufficient in itself to make a project viable. So in many of the countries that we work with, a sectoral approach would be more appropriate in terms of reducing costs and gaining economies of scale. I will present to you today some of the existing sectoral type of approaches. We are using jurisdictional here as a broader term. Sorry, went backwards. So when we talk about jurisdictional approaches, people often think about REDD+, and in jurisdictional approaches, you need to have a jurisdiction, an administration that is responsible for that sector. So when it comes to the energy sector, oftentimes it's not state-owned. You have private sector companies that are operating within the energy sector. Therefore, a jurisdictional approach per se may not be the most appropriate. But there are different approaches that aim the same objectives and are either already available to be used with some adjustments, or have been recently launched, or are being developed right now. So I am going to present some of these options that already exist or could be created in order to promote a higher level implementation of these interventions. The first one would be the program of activities of the Clean Development Mechanism. So it's interesting to see that the Clean Development Mechanism, as everyone knows, is the market centralized instrument that came before Article 6.4. And one of the lessons that they learned very early on in the implementation of the Clean Development Mechanism is that projects were not reaching the impact that was needed, and the transaction costs were oftentimes very high. So there were revisions made to the structure, and methodologies were created to allow for a program of activities. And what the program of activities is basically to create a framework under which small projects that follow the same rationale can be developed. So you don't go with your specific small project through the whole cycle of approving a project and certifying credits. You create a framework under which different project interventions can be implemented, allowing, therefore, smaller projects to become financially viable. So we have a graph here on the left, on your right, that shows a little bit that already in the Asia-Pacific region, there is a trend, not only to have a lot of projects, but also to see the program of activities scaling up. It's interesting to see that the technology, the structure for the projects remains the same. And I give here one example of a program of activity. I just entered the CDM website to present this to you. and this is a project that's hosted by the Philippines. So their basic project structure is that their baseline scenario is one that all the different industries were using fossil fuel. They will switch to renewable energy. There is direct and indirect supply. They create the methodological framework within the program of activity, and then they open calls for individual projects to implement this program of activities, but the face of the projects become the program vis-a-vis the convention. And that means that higher level results are achieved at a much lower cost. The coordinating or managing entity is the one that is responsible for selecting the smaller projects that are viable or not, and this can be included over time. So you don't need to start with every single project right away. This can come along as you move forward. In terms of jurisdictional implementation in the energy sector, the Energy Transition Accelerator is one of the initiatives that the US government has launched 2 COPs ago, so 2 years ago. WinRock has developed a methodology for the jurisdictional implementation in the energy sector. WinRock has used a lot of the experience in RED Plus to develop this methodology. They have continued with their consultations. They have a few countries that they are engaging in discussions, and they will host internal meetings at this COP. So this is an ongoing process for the development of this approach. This is not yet ready to be used. But the idea, again, is that countries that apply to the Energy Transition Accelerator, they present this set of regulations and policies that they have. Usually in different developing countries for the energy sector, there is a projection of energy needs and sources. This is used as your baseline for this either state government or national government. This baseline goes through validation and verification as any other project. Then you have the different projects, but also policy interventions and investments that come along. You don't need to have an attribution of specific projects and interventions to the results. They are all measured at the jurisdictional level. And then you can have the different distribution of these incentives and benefits to the specific plants that reach the requirements that were set up either by the policies or the broader program that is implemented. But the face of the certification of these results is the jurisdiction that is applying for certification. Now, a third option that is going in this direction of moving away from project level and implementing a higher scale approach was launched recently by the Gold Standard. They have launched a methodology that is policy-based crediting. So basically, they are looking at ways and means to measure the specific impact of policy interventions that the countries have. So these slides showed what the difference is between the project-based crediting and the policy-based crediting. So traditionally, in particular for the voluntary carbon markets, you have the government on the side. So the government is not as engaged. It's private sector developing the projects. It's private sector buying the credits. And this is how the interventions are set up. Now, with the policy-based crediting methodology, the government is also in the forefront of this implementation because it is the government that is implementing the methodology to see what the impact is of that intervention. It's important to note that not all policies are eligible for this type of crediting methodology. It needs to be a policy that directly impacts through its own activities or interventions, the result achieved on the ground. So if you have like a specific measure for renewable energy or energy efficiency, electrification, fuel switch, you can now use gold standard methodology to track over time the progress of this policy, and then you can generate credits from the achievements that these policies have. You cannot use this methodology for the more indirect type of policies that also have an impact in emissions, like emission trading schemes or carbon tax. Even though they have an impact in reducing emissions, it's not necessarily this intervention that directly leads to that. You need to have an action that leads to that result. This is a little bit of the schematic summary of the certification structure. It is similar to the program of activities, but it's the next generation of the program of activities. So here I presented to you a timeline that you can see a trend where they're moving away from project to program of activity and reaching this policy certification. So it's policy-based program. You have the specific cases that you track throughout. And of course, the validation and verification remains the same. Gold Standard has the whole document of how the certification is done, and they are actually keen to work with countries to pilot this initiative, and UNDP is supporting them in this process. In conclusion, I have a few messages that I would like to bring to you. It's important to say that Article 6 implementation needs to be scaled up in order to ensure that international cooperation contributes to the goals of the Paris Agreement. And I'm coming from this, even with UNDP actually supporting project implementation for international cooperation. What I'm seeing is that this takes a long time, and the total amount of results being generated is very small compared to the demand that you have for ITMOS. So it takes a long time, it costs a lot, and in the end, very few credits are being generated because we want to be conservative. We want to make sure that these methodologies are not overestimating. So we don't need to tweak the methodologies. We need to change the approach, move from projects to sectoral jurisdictional approach. Programs of activities, sectoral jurisdictional approaches, as well as this policy methodology, have immediate opportunities to reduce transaction costs and enhance impact. So it's definitely something that should be explored, and I'm happy to see the Korean colleagues looking at this alternative. You are really in the forefront of this. This higher level approach is also much more consistent with the nationally determined contributions, because when you do your NDC, it's an inventory-based target that you're setting up. So you're not looking at project interventions, you're looking at the whole sector. And this is a real challenge that we are facing with the projects that we have in our portfolio now, because usually when you have a project level intervention, you can be much more accurate and your carbon content usually is much higher. But when you do a sectoral approach, you're usually more conservative, and the level of consistency and alignment with the greenhouse gas inventory is much higher. Therefore, when it comes to making the adjustments to the NDC accounts, it's much more straightforward. So it's definitely a positive outcome from this type of approach. UNDP is working to structure these opportunities also with our Korean partners, and we are using a lot of the 15 years of experience that we had with RED Plus to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes and that we contribute to the gain in economy of scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I would like to summarize what Leticia has just presented on, from Korea's point of view, we have been a good learner, right? We learned things very quickly, and then we tend to become number one in learning and implementation. And then what the UNDP indicated with the partnership with the Republic of Korea, Korea can be not only a fast learner, but now leading the whole world, right? UNDP recognized there is a new necessary to develop the jurisdictional approach in energy sector, and then Korean government is very much leading in that to that direction as well. So we will see maybe next year how much this partnership could be developed as first case in energy sector to develop the jurisdictional approach. And then if so, then it will be good for the MDC implementation of both countries. Maybe next GST will highlight these efforts for the entire world. So having said that, thank you very much for the three presenters from the forest sector, and then the blue carbon and the energy sector all have its good merits, and then we shared a lot of good lessons for the participants in this room. Now, I'd like to move to the panel discussion session. I initially thought about having some quick Q&A, but we are already behind the schedule. So let me just invite 4 panelists to the podium so that we can start right away for the discussions. All right. So we have 4 distinguished panelists. Let me just briefly introduce the 4 panelists. From my right, it's Miss Jungmin Ham. She works for the where is it? Ham Ju-young. She works for the Korea Marine Environment Management Corporation. And she has been in charge of implementing Article 6 activities for the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. And then the next, Mr. Kim Hyung-seok. He made a long trip actually to attend this session as the team leader of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. And then to my left, Dr. Jiwon Jung. Dr. Chung works for the Korea Institute for the International Economic Policy, and then Dr. Chung advises the Korean government on the ODA policy in general. And then to our left, Dr. Lee-hyun Kim. Dr. Lee-hyun Kim is an expert on the RED Plus in the Republic of Korea, and then he works for the National Institute for Forestry Service. So as I already indicated that, I invited 4 experts and government official in the relevant field so that we can further provide some of the inputs on how things have been developed and considered from the Korea's point of view. So having said that, let me start with Mr. Kim, and then I assume that you're going to talk about your immediate interest in the developing the sort of the large scale of the emission reduction project activities overseas, maybe possibly with some of the other partner organizations such as the UNDP. So floor is yours.
Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me for such a meaningful time. I work for the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, which is in charge of energy and industry sector for the greenhouse gas reduction. Briefly speaking, the Korean government has an explicit target for the overseas greenhouse gas reduction, which is 37 million tons by 2030. And to implement those targets, we have made some treaties with 8 countries, and we have also signed some bilateral MOU with 5 or 6 countries. So at the early stage, we have developed several pilot projects, which is about mobility and fuel change and renewable energy project. So we are in the early stage at the moment, but we are thinking about how to improve those policies about Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. And let me briefly share some experience on those projects and MOU. Recently, my deputy minister met with the Cambodian government vice minister to discuss what the project is about and how to validate those methodologies about the pilot project. So it takes about very long time, and in those meetings, I thought about this is not sustainable because the very high level of government officials met together to discuss just one pilot project. That's not possible for to be generalized. So I thought that this is not sustainable. And the next thing is that we didn't know that what the Cambodian government or host countries want in this partnership and cooperations. We didn't know that their side, and they didn't know what Korean government wants about these cooperations. So I reviewed the Paris Agreement again. We have 6.2 and 6.4. Why did they separate 6.2 from 6.4? Because there are several ways to implement Paris Agreement, so we can choose one of them. But we have tried 6.2 just like 6.4. That's not suitable for every project, but I guess it is because we are so accustomed and used to CDM or Kyoto Protocol. So that's the kind of one of the reasons why we implement those pilot projects just like the CDM way. So looking back to the Paris Agreement text, I reread the Paris Agreement text. The two words came to my mind. Those two words are cooperations and sustainable development. Looking back my experience, I think that we forget about the basic reason or basic the meaning of the Paris Agreement. Actually, I think that the Paris Agreement 6.2 aims that two countries can cooperate to implement greenhouse gas reductions, but it can be it is not just about selling mitigation outcome credit, or it's not just about buying some credits from foreign countries. It's about cooperation and it's about sustainable development. But we forget about the meaning. So I think that we need to go back to the basic, and we need to make some progress about the sustainable development. So from this meeting today, I learned many things and experience from the forestry sector. So the forestry sector is already focused on the holistic approaches and jurisdictional approaches. As you know, the energy sector is interconnected with many other components and sectors and many other policies. We cannot build just one plant by one single project. We need to develop whole region or whole sectors, combining mobilities and infrastructures, and it can be energy or industry or any other component can be intertwined together. So to my understanding, those are the approaches we need to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. So as you may know, that Korea has a very energy-intensive industry structure, which gives us a lot of challenges to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as planned. And then here, especially in the energy sector, because of the good experiences with the CDM, energy sector may start to have some challenges in terms of securing large amount of emission reduction amount. So in the sense that there is some potential needs to develop the jurisdictional approach so that Korea may be engaged in a larger scale of the activities with partner countries. So in the sense that, thank you very much for your kind introduction on what your ministry has been thinking about. Now, let me go to Dr. Rayon Kim. I assume that he's going to talk about issues on forestry. So, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Professor Chung. I'm Rayon Kim. I work in the National Institute of Forest Science in Korea. My working area is the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory Report and an NDC like that, and also RED Plus. I really love that today's topic is the jurisdictional approach under the Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement, because I would like to talking about the workshop framework RED Plus under the operating by the UNFCCC, because as a good practice of these issues. Maybe some of you, maybe not familiar to the RED Plus, but most of you know that the voluntary carbon market between the voluntary carbon market is under the situation a little bit difficult past a few years, because that the reason is the greenwashing issues caused by the RED Plus project, some kind of RED Plus project as a project scale. And then, but I would like to want to explain that the workshop framework RED Plus that is negotiated for 10 years from 2005 to 2015, and then finally insert some kind of articles, Article 5, that is implemented based on the implement in the national or subnational scale. That is a very important principles in under the UN the workshop framework RED Plus. So nowadays the voluntary carbon market's RED Plus project is also implementing as a national jurisdictional scale, and so some kind of a LEAF coalition and the beta project like that. And then back to the talking about why RED Plus activities should be implemented national and or subnational scale. One thing is the mitigation scale, reduction scale. Workshop framework RED Plus, more than 70 countries engaged in this time, and then most of the countries that implementing the RED Plus project as a national and subnational scale. Among these countries, only around 20 countries produce some kind of mitigation outcomes. The amount is over than 10 gigaton CO, 10 giga CO2 ton. And that is that is 10 times of the voluntary carbon market's amount. Because that is produced in the national scale, and then remember that the over than 50 countries remaining and then they implementing the RED Plus project under the workshop framework RED Plus as a national or subnational scale. And second one is that avoid leakage. RED Plus project is at the national and or subnational scale do not occurring some kind of leakage because that the country control the implementing the Red Plus project on the whole cover that whole territories of their nations. So the leakage is could be controlled on the national scale. And then third one is that consistent with the national greenhouse gas inventory. I'd like to remind that the purpose of Red Plus activities is the focus on the achieved NDC of their own NDC, some kind of country. So the consistency between mitigation outcomes by Red Plus activities and the national greenhouse gas inventory is a very important things. And then there are many other advantages implementing by implementing as a national wind or subnational scale and related to workshop frame Red Plus. And then I would like to this kind of good practice expanding to that other sectors like blue carbon and energy sector like that. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Kim, as I understand, emphasized the sort of the potential that the current Warsaw framework may have in forest sector, which is a possibility of being used to deal with other sectors, including the blue carbon and the energy. And then in the context, I assume that Korea Forest Service has been working a lot on this issue of how to implement the Warsaw framework in the forest sector in other developing countries. So now I'd like to invite Ms. Ju Young Ham for your present discussions.
Okay, my name is Ju Young Ham from Korea Marine Environment Management Corporation, (KOAM). And first, I'd like to say how honored I attend this important event. To start, introduce our organizations. KOAM is the public organization under the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries in Korea, and is responsible for managing overseas emission reduction under the Article 6.2 in marine fishery, port, and shipping sector. Today, I'd like to share the state of Korea's efforts for overseas emission reduction in marine sector. To support Korea NDC implementations, the Ministry of Ocean and Fishery has established a 2050 carbon neutral roadmap in marine and fishery sectors. The Ministry of Ocean and Fishery has set an ambitious greenhouse gas reduction target of not only achieving net zero by 2050, but going forward aiming for the carbon negative. Actually, we have no experience of CDM in energy sector and do not have any jurisdictional project like LED Plus, but we are still in the early stage of cooperation approach under the Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. So far, we are exploring pathways through international organizations such as GGGI and World Bank and feasibility study to support the private sector engagement. So regarding cooperation with GGGI, the Ms. Penela Awan has already mentioned the Ministry of Ocean and Fishery and GGGI signed an MOU for collaborations on the cooperation approaches for NDC implementation in blue carbon sector. So we think that the GGGI network of 49 members and expertise in cooperative approach done under Article 6.2 allows us to leverage the outcomes for identifying projects in potential host countries in the marine sector. So in addition to the GGGI, the Ministry of Ocean and Fishery and KOAM are collaborating with the World Bank. So we are linking emission reduction efforts with the World Bank's ODA project, a Sustainable Fisheries Development Project in Vietnam, by installing solar panel on newly built or renovated structure under this ODA project in Vietnam. So, on the other hand, we have also initiative project to support feasibility study for the private sector. This year, feasibility studies were conducted for a mangrove restoration project in Egypt and for energy efficiency and solar panel installations in Indonesia. If these feasibility studies are successful, we will consider further main projects. We are exploring overseas reduction project involving mangroves in various countries. Since mangrove serves as both forest and marine ecosystem, we believe they could open new avenue for cooperation between the forestry and marine sectors. Moreover, the feasibility study which we are doing involve the installation of solar panels in ports are related to the energy sector. So I also believe that the marine and energy sector could collaborate to undertake major projects under the jurisdictional approach under Article 6.2. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Ms. Ham just introduced, that Minister of Oceans and Fisheries has just started to work on the implementing the Article 6 mechanisms by itself, and then that it already made some good progress, not only in the mangrove and blue carbon in general, also other energy related issues in the marine and coastal areas, and then I do hope that it will make further big progress so that it can make a great contributions to achieve the Korean NDC, also working together with the developing countries for their sustainable development as well. So now we already heard here and there about the role of the ODA. So it's time for us to invite the ODA specialist of the Republic of Korea. So in the sense that I'd like to invite Dr. Ji-won Jung from Kiev. Floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Professor Jung, for kind introduction. Today we discuss effective implementation strategies for Article 6. And also here the Korean government proposed jurisdictional approach. I work for the Korean government and researching on international cooperation with developing countries on climate change. So my comment will be from this point of view. As you know, and everyone says Korea has ambitious climate goal for 2030, and also we have significant challenges. The ongoing negotiation are very tough, and many countries aren't quite ready to engage in Article 6 project. So to address this, Korean government providing financial resources for feasibility studies and project implementation for mitigation project abroad. And also Korean government thinking about utilizing the potential of official development assistance ODA. While ODA can be valuable source, but we also know there are some concerns about its misuse. We all know that OECD Development Assistance Committee (DAC) has concluded that ODA should not be used to acquire carbon credit from developing countries. And we all know that the Paris Agreement also emphasized the importance of sustainable development of developing country. So today we all hear lots of from the activity from the international organizations. They like GGGI and UNDP who are with us today offer technical assistance and capacity building program to have countries having developed their national expertise and also institutional infrastructure for utilizing this Article 6. So helping countries use Article 6 with or without ODA can be crucial for this time. You know that it is obvious that ODA project should adhere to international standards such as Paris Declaration and aid effectiveness on SDGs. As an OECD member country, Korea is committed to follow that international standard. So try to improve the quality of ODA, ensuring that climate-related projects have clear climate goals, and also they are well managed. So to conclude, successful implementation of Article 6 requires a collaborative approach for all of us. And all the countries must work together to tackle this all kind of technical and political hurdles. I believe Korea can play a leading role in advancing Article 6, and by carefully planning ODA and fostering strong partnership with developing partners, we can accelerate the transition to the low carbon economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. So she emphasized that the ODA cannot be used to purchase the credits or ITMOs. However, there are a lot of room for the ODA to be used to take care of the readiness of the Article 6 implementation. So within the world of the ODA, we have recognized that there are a lot of rooms where ODA can provide a very initial risk management funding or capacity building funding for the developing countries, so that from developing countries' point of view, with this experience, that host governments can not only work with Korea, maybe with other potential donor countries as well. And so, having said that, it's important for Korea actually to develop their Article 6.2 focused ODA policy, which is in the broader context of green ODA that the President of Korea has emphasized these days a lot. So we have listened to different issues about the jurisdictional approach to implement Article 6.2. And then we have about 2 to 3 minutes left before asking the Vice Minister Park for his concluding remarks. So I'd like to open the floor so that I can take maybe 1 or 2 questions. If not, I will quickly close the floor so that we can move to the closing session. So thank you very much. So now I'd like to invite the Mr. Chungkyu Park, who is the head of the UNOSD, at the same time the former Vice Minister, Minister of Environment. Mr. Park has appeared in our series of jurisdictional projects from last year and this year, maybe later on, again and again. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Chung. Good afternoon, colleagues, distinguished guests. I'm very happy to listen to the various opinions and viewpoints on the Article 6.2, in particular, the cooperative approaches by the different sectors, including oceans, blue carbon, represented by the blue carbon, and also the forest areas, and also the energy sectors. Very interesting. And also, I'm very happy to witness there's so many very, very renowned presenters like UNDP and GGGI. And also, setting the scene, we could hear about Howard Bamji, about he was very in a big shot. He was the director of the GGGI and also the GCF. we had a very honor to hear about his very famous and very insightful conception and perception on the Article 6.2. And as a closing remarks, I could summarize key messages from this seminar. The first one I think is both of the presenters from the GGGI and the UNDP and also Howard point out the importance of the MRB. I think that is a good thing, good foundation for when we link the Article 6 and Article 13 of Paris Agreement, because this year is very important to the bilateral BTR, bilateral transparency report. There is a deadline of this end of this year, and the next year we will expect NDC 3.0. There is a closely linked between if we don't have a very poor and very accurate foundation for the MRB, then there is impact on the quality of the NDCs. That's why we need to establish a very good and concrete foundation for the MRB system. That is, I would just highlight the importance of the inventory systems. And then another next one is, as Professor Chung highlight, that is ODA. Professor Chung of the KIAP mentioned about ODA should be used for the enhanced capacities, capabilities, not purchase purchase directly the credits. That is very important thing, because this year, this COP29, we foresee that the financial issue is the critical one. Whether or not this in COP29 will be a success or not. I think that's a very, very important thing. So if we have some kind of balance between the donor countries and also the recipient countries, in that sense, we need to be very careful to conduct the cooperative approaches, especially the Article 6.2. So I think Professor Chung is correctly summarized Dr. John's mention about ODA's functionalities. I think that is a very important thing that we have in mind to conduct the ODA activities. Another one is Howard mentioned about that we need to very carefully choose the partners. That's so important, because when you have actually many countries want to enhance and also increase the internal projects based upon the Article 6.2 and 6.4. But there are so many countries want to increase that. Korea is one of the countries that, as we see this afternoon. But other countries, I see the lots of countries aware of the importance of the Article 6.2 and 6.4. And also GGGI has a very good program to provide the different countries with readiness programs. I think that is a very good point that all of other international organizations should refer to. The third one is my notes mentioned that we need to take note of the importance of ambitious targets, as Howard Bam mentioned. Because what is the purpose of the carbon market? That is, I would like to recall the place that I was, involving in the negotiation at the time. There's a bit ago, many years ago, I mean not a bit ago, many years ago, I would like to highlight the one place that is the leaping low-hanging fruit. What is the low-hanging fruit? That's the easiest way. But after if you completing leaping the low-hanging fruit, what's the next one? That means if we from the viewpoint of the economics, if you take the advantages of the easiest, relatively easiest technology, and then you will go up to the develop your technologies and using the finance to develop another difficult, develop the difficult technology to achieve the greenhouse gases mitigation targets. That is that is obvious one. We should. So many years ago, every speaker talked about we need to lift the low-hanging fruit first, and then develop the technologies and institutions, infrastructures, and then we go advance forward. We move forward. I think, that is still effective in this time. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much again. Yeah, our office and taking this up, opportunity. I would like to introduce our office's event tomorrow, same time, 4:30, the same place here in Korea Pavilion. Our office will hold another event. The topic is the linkages between Article 6 and Article 13, and we are focusing on the transparency issues. So I would like to invite all of you to attend our office's event. Professor Chung will also come. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of this long journey somehow for 2 hours, exploring different sectors and how we can utilize the Article 6.2, how to make a partnership between the governments and the international organizations. And then there was a good reasons why we invited actually former Vice Minister Park for his concluding remarks, because his office is very much strong in the promoting and then providing services on the MRV and Article 13 issues of the Paris Agreement. So I hope that you enjoyed this journey together with us, and then I hope that governments and the partner organizations make further progress actually to bring us some of the tangible outcomes next year in this room again. All right, thank you very much.